Yeah, interesting. So, one of the notably, let's say, things that the U.S. did is the CPA, Coalition Provisional Authority. Um, what kind of consequences do you think they had on Iraqi society till this day?
Oh, I mean, I think the whole political system was developed in that first 2 years, the first year and a half. And it's Bremer, the Ambassador Bremer, who was in charge of the CPA and was basically the ruler of Iraq for that first year or so. It's also the governing council that was made up of a lot of these exiled Iraqis who came back, so people like Chalabi. And the in combination, like Bremer and the CPA, and then this small group of Iraqi exiles are creating the system that we have today, like that we call the muhasasa ta'ifiyya or muhasasa al-hizbiyya system, where power and resources gets divided by these into these political parties that have sectarian affiliations, and it has created so much pain and hardship. It is really tough to see because I think there was an opportunity. I think there was a desire by Iraqis and Americans to try to have a government that was free and fair and better than what came before it. And of course, it's, better in ways, and freedom of speech, I think, is actually a really one clear like outcome that comes from it. Like there is a lot of Iraqi newspapers now, and like there's like freedom of speech is something that is a result, but it hasn't been a very functional system that provides essential services for the needs of the people by and large. And the Tisserine protests, I know we're part of this, but it's been a complaint for a long time. The corruption really came from this period. I mean, I think a lot of Iraq's problems today you can trace back to 2003. And yes, there are some deeper origins in the Saddam era. It's like especially corruption became a bigger issue in Iraq in the 90s, but not on the scale that it became after 2003. And so I'm sorry to say that I do think a lot of Iraq's political problems today do stem from the US invasion.
Yeah, and I think that it's mostly about creating this ethno-sectarian
Mm-hmm.
and entrenching, like it's creating a sectarian identity as a form of political currency, this is, I think, was the most effect that it had on Iraq, which is proceeding to be the same till this day, right? But I also believe that the reason, like after reading your book, is that it's not just this reason, but it's became like whoever is the service provider is the ruler, and that at the time was al-Sadr. So he was providing mostly. He had the Mahdi army. He was like protecting. So since Iraqis are very used to having the past structure and like having people provide for them, having the government, I mean, provide for them, it only made sense to rely on the next provider, right? And maybe it would help if you share more about that era where like Sadr was like struggling with the councils and like trying to build his name up and trying to provide for people, and why particularly the Sadr has arose to power, you think?
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating. So, I guess I'll start the story with this with Sadr's side of it, and then I'll come back and I can explain more about the American councils. But so, I mean, so I was let's see, I was in high school and college when the U.S. invaded Iraq. So I followed it very, very closely, and I watched all the headlines, and then of course later I went back and really studied this myself as a researcher. And there were a lot of things I knew about the U.S. invasion. I knew about the looting. I knew about the corruption. But I think until I really started talking to Iraqis, I didn't understand the impact of like the day that the Americans came, the garbage stopped being collected. Like, like the just basic essential services that we take for granted in any major city in the world, just that keeps life sustained, stopped because that was the government that provided that. And there was no government anymore. And it eventually, right, people kind of recreate this. Okay, but so just the kind of suffering that happens when you're like, there's a sewage pipe broken and it's spilling out into the street, and there's actually no one to call. Like, there's no one who exists that I can call to fix this unless we fix it ourselves. The neighbors fix it themselves. And so Sadr, who was sort of a rising figure at the time, this was really the time when he became famous and well known. What's interesting is that he didn't just create a militia, which is, I think, the more famous part of his work is the Mahdi army, but he created also the Sadr Bureau, and this office that was just providing social services, humanitarian services. And actually, so I think on the one hand, he's an Iraqi, he sees the need and he knows what people are used to. Also, there are previous examples like Hezbollah in Lebanon or even Hamas in Gaza. They have a similar, or the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, they had similar strategies of combining their political message with social services. So he's also not totally creating this out of, like, he's not inventing this for the first time either. So I don't know if he's thinking about that consciously, that, oh, this is sort of like Hezbollah, but he certainly might be well influenced by an organization like that as well. But so in the neighborhoods he controls, which is, especially Sadr City, he is able to provide fuel. He is able to provide medicine. He is able to provide food and employment, right? Because you can get a job in his militia, or you could get a job in his bureau. And so he is providing security, right? He's providing checkpoints. And so functionally, he becomes the government. He is the state.